discount rate by rep is like one of the craziest metrics that often CROs don't look at and
Yeah.
blows my mind. On average, between 7 to 12% of sales calls drop a discount in the first 5 minutes of the phone call. I've seen a company going, we really want to move the needle. Do you guys realize you, on average, discount about $220,000 a month? No?
Yeah.
Cool. On average, get this. On average, all of the deals, once you bake everything out, an average of a 28% discount on every deal every month.
Greetings, fellow legacy changers. It's your main man, T-Rev, and it's time to connect good so we can collect good. This is Legacy Connect. So let's go, let's grow.
To be what you meant to be, it's never too late. That time link won't challenge me when I...
So Chris, I almost made myself unhireable by this controversial statement that I said to a group of CEOs, CROs not too long ago. I told them, data-driven decisions, data sucks sometimes. And before all of you hit the eject button like the old school, stay with me. I have someone very special here on the Legacy Connect podcast to make sense of what I said and to bring light and to help you exponentially grow, get better results out of your company, get better results as a seller. This is one of the important ones. There's a buzzword, data-driven decisions. So, Chris, I want you to jump in here so we can have some context. I got a question for you before I jump into the question. No, the question is, so you think about this. I think about sales decks. They all scream, "Hey, we're data driven." We hear this all over. We make data driven decisions for you. We're the best. Your organization's going to operate and hit on all cylinders. Your sellers are going to sell. And I read something recently that says, "Why do most reps still treat dashboards like a Times Square billboard? It's bright, it's busy, yet it's totally ignored by sellers." What's the biggest lie that we tell ourselves about data-driven cultures that we hear so much? And before you answer it, Chris, let me tell you why I'm asking Chris, everyone. Chris Hill is a RevOps guru. He put the revenue in operations, hence the word RevOps, and made it all the rage to be talking about RevOps these days. He is a successful founder of startups, and founded Good Halo Solutions. And he's helping a multitude of companies, people, to have much greater efficiency and profitability from the data. But he tells us how to realistically look at the data so we gain something from it, so people are motivated. You feel me on that? So let's go, let's grow. So Chris, let's go back to that question. What's the biggest lie we tell ourselves about data-driven cultures?
Biggest thing is, a lot of companies aren't data-driven. I like to call them data-decorated.
Data-decorated. Let's coin it now.
They have thousands of reports, hundreds of dashboards, and where they kind of fall short is they don't really teach the inputs behind the dashboards or the reports. They never create baselines. They look at a report, they see a trend line up, looks great. That trend line up looks awesome. But how does it compare to that same time frame last year? Everybody only looks at reporting and dashboards to tell the story to win, right? They got different filters, different criteria, different understanding, different time frames. When in reality, you need to make sure you have a source of truth. You shouldn't have 5 dashboards for 5 different sales managers. You should have a singular dashboard that's a source of truth that everybody looks at. Meanwhile, you got one sales manager that's looking at last week's performance on his dashboard. Meanwhile, you got the VP of sales looking at the last quarter. You're telling your sales manager his performance is down. Meanwhile, his dashboards for the past 2 weeks tells him he's on an upward trend. And that's where we get too data decorated instead of having those sources of truth across the org.
People, before we go any further and dive deeper, I need you to stop and quickly hit the subscription button, the like button, share it with your friends. This is all about taking people from nothing to something good to great, changing their legacy. And when you do that small favor for me, it helps more people get this knowledge and this wisdom. You ask not, you have not. So I'm asking you that. So let's think about the sales rep. How do we create clarity around the data? Because we have different things going, different strokes for different folks. There's no harmony, there's no unity, there's no one good system to like truly measure it. And it's all data, but we're measuring different systems. How does that affect the rep, the sales rep that you're trying to get to make decisions on it? Do you think when they have these different, when each sales manager, director, whatever you want to call it in the org, has something different going on?
I think for the sales rep, they need to understand the data. It's also better when there's a source of truth because, again, even reps have their own reports that they built to tell their story.
Yep.
That's where you get to those 1,000 reports. So having those sources of truth, so one, you're on the same page versus that argument of, well, my connect rate looks fine last week. Okay, that's great, but I'm looking at the last month. So that's where that singular source of understanding on, we're comparing apples to apples between the manager and the sales rep is important. But two, empowering the sales rep with what inputs do they control that impact that number, that metric, that report. Oftentimes, we don't train any of that. We go in, we tell a sales rep, hey, this is connect rate. Cool. What do I do to control that? Because oftentimes they blame the leads if that metric's down, right? Connect rate's down, leads suck. Happens all the time.
Yeah.
Well, actually, are you using local presence when you call? When did you stop doing that? Oh, look, that's when your connect rate went down. That's an input you control, sales rep, not the manager. It's not the leads. What areas are you calling geographically? Multiple times I've seen, people bring up a report and they go, look, connect rate's down, leads are bad.
Yeah.
Actually, when we dig into the data and we actually understand the inputs and I look at where you're calling, you're in New York, but you're calling leads in California at 5 o'clock in the morning their time. Of course, your connect rate's low. The leads aren't bad. It's your inputs. So empowering the sales rep to understand what inputs go into every metric on a dashboard and how to read it is really how you empower them. Because now they have a checklist. I know this is down.
Yep.
Let me go check off what I can control before I start looking for help and take up other resources, other departments' time, sales operation, RevOps. And that's where making sure everybody's aligned and understands the data, even down to the sales rep, really matters. And that's where most companies stop. They assume that the manager is going to do it all, right? He'll go and show them the report dashboard and explain what's wrong to them. And most of the time, it's just rattling off tons of data metrics that nobody understands. And yet that's why you get no change. See it all the time.
How often do you think that these reminders should pop up when you say, hey, the sales rep's got to own some of that? The manager's doing it all. And you mentioned hey, there's a call connection rate that it's gone down.
Yep.
What is your suggestion in terms of when those red flags pop up? Is it in a weekly meeting? Is there a flag something that should be flagged within Salesforce that's daily? What's the solution to help these guys perform better in that aspect?
A lot of it is creating your baselines on when to flag. That's another thing. What does good look like? What does average look like? And it's like conditional formatting in an Excel spreadsheet. You got to have those triggers of, are they above or below where they should be? And I've been in a dozen orgs where they don't know that number. Is 20% connect rate good? Is it bad? How bad is it? Is it 3%? And I think that's step one to figuring out how quickly you should review those numbers. How quickly can they change? If you're an enterprise sell, not a big deal. It's long term, right? So I normally tell people connect rate, set rate, those are things you look at quickly. Otherwise, you base everything around your sales cycle because they haven't fully baked, right? You see a number drop, it's only day one of a new sales cycle, new quarter, new month, whatever their operational process flow is. Give it time to bake. You can't jump to conclusions before things have had time to bake, right? Conversion rate's low on the leads we got yesterday. We have a 7-day sales cycle. They need to bake, they need to convert, they need to have time to work them before we actually know the true performance number. Just because it's down on day one doesn't mean it's true. So that gets back to, like I said, understanding your source of truth, your baselines, when to worry, when not to worry, and how bad are things really. Because oftentimes they'll freak out, and then you really dive in and go, well, it's down, but it's only down 0.5%. And you're still top 20% out of the whole company. Not a problem here.
Thinking of like what's problematic, thinking of that word. If you can think of something, why don't you give us the wildest example you've seen a company drowning in reports, yet starving for insight? And then you alluded to it earlier. All the reports, all the shiny bells and whistles, they got it all, yet they're still saying, hey, we don't have insight on this, or we don't know what's going on.
The way I'd like to answer this one is, and I always say devil's in the details. Oftentimes I've watched a company, hey, our deal velocity went off a cliff. We were pacing, 200 deals a day. All of a sudden it just dropped off. Now we're doing like 130. Their whole leadership team spends a couple hours looking over reports, pulling data, what leads are we calling? What's the connect rate? What's the rate? All your typical go-tos, right? And then finally, I joined the meeting. When did the drop happen? Right here. We know the day. It happened right here. Something, cool. What did we roll out? What's your log of change management? Come to find out, well, we rolled out a new product and we changed our pricing model. Cool. How big of a price increase was that? About 40%. Cool. You probably priced out a good bit of your ICP market. That's it. It's not in the data. That's a project. That's a rollout over here.
Yeah.
It's not in the reports. It's not in the dashboards. And that's where oftentimes I always say devil's in the details, and you need to keep a change log of big company changes, new products, new initiatives, new sales scripts, new hires, leadership changes, all that stuff, because those often cause a blip in your reporting and your dashboards. And the reports and dashboards aren't going to tell you that story. And they spent 2 hours for us to come in and within 15 minutes correlate everything back to just a pricing change.
So speaking of that, you're pointing that out in that experience. Like what's the single pipeline metric that you think is most misunderstood? Like what costly misbehavior does that misunderstanding create on the sales floor?
One of my favorite questions, and it's probably one of the first things I bring up with any sales operations, sales leader that I meet, is demos scheduled for the week, right? That's where you're looking at, how many demos are we probably going to run this week? What's the close rate look like? And I always ask them, cool, what percentage are reschedules? And they can never tell me that number. Probably 85% of the time, I've never had a single one tell me, well, 75% of my reps demos for this week are actually reschedules from the past 2 weeks, 2 months that flaked. And oftentimes that pipeline looks great. Oh, he's got 15 demos this week. Yeah, but 9 of them have been rescheduled twice because they keep no-showing them. And he keeps kicking the can down the road, trying to get them to show up. It's a ghost pipeline. You're just adding additional steps to them ghosting you by you trying to follow up.
Yeah.
Rescheduled count is a metric that I've always put in at a lot of companies, just so that when they're looking at a pipeline, is this a net new demo scheduled, or is this a rescheduled that's already not showed twice? I'm not going to count that my projection.
And in saying that, no shows and talking about reschedules, sellers hate it. They're ghosting me. These leads suck. Sometimes there's a lack of accountability on the seller. Then you have a manager trying to motivate, hey, let's get those appointments, schedule, how many you got on the list, but they keep rescheduling. So then you have what I want to talk about, because that leads me to this. We can look at the data of how many and pull up that metric, but how do you reconcile, and can RevOps help with to trigger training, or what you do trigger training? Because it could be they keep rescheduling, sellers blaming it on the quality, but maybe something is a soft skill in them setting up that demo, them setting up that discovery call. We'll call it the discovery call,
Yeah.
and the demo, we'll call it one and the same. And it's not sticking. So it could be like, hey, you have to work on what you're saying, that delivery, and creating that urgency to get the client to stick.
Yeah.
Are there certain, in your plans and what you're looking at and what you're coaching other leaders on and even sellers on, is there something you're teaching them in the data? Say, hey, I want you to look at this, and this is what's going to trigger you to say, hey, we need to do some training on X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. And that kind of gets back to what I was saying earlier about the baselines, because that's where you really understand where a rep is lacking. If you know all of our top performers are here, not everybody's going to be a top performer. Here's our middle of the road, performance baseline for our average rep. But then you have down here is where you don't want to be. Using that and knowing that for all the different stages of a sell, from connect rates, hold rates, set rates, number of reschedules on average per rep, you can look at all these metrics by rep. You engage those triggers to know, hey, if 30% of their weekly demos are reschedules, that's higher than 78% of our reps. Let's flag that we should start teaching them how to qualify a reschedule. You'd be amazed at how many, I ask them, what's your process for reschedules right now? If they say we can try again next week, like, I'll schedule it. Cool. Did you talk to them on the phone? Well, no, they just responded, I just asked them in a text message if we can do Friday, and they said, sure. Did you reiterate any value? Did you reiterate their pains? The solution that you said you could provide? Like, did you give any value again to reiterate the reason they scheduled the first one that they didn't show up? No, I didn't do that. Cool. Kick that one out of your pipeline. If you're not reiterating the value and they didn't show the first meeting when you built value, do you honestly think you're going to roll the dice and they're going to show up this next time? No, your probability went down. And it goes down every reschedule. And that's another thing we track, a cliff. And every company, every, market, TAM is all different. But figuring out at what number of reschedules before deals just die and you never convert them, then you can create automated pipeline cleanup. Hey, we've never converted a deal that's rescheduled 3 times. Cool. Anything that gets to 3 reschedules, we're automatically going to recycle and take out of a rep's pipeline. If it's a really hard, crazy, one-off, they can go talk to their manager and we'll make an exception. But that's how you create your automated pipeline cleanup, keep pipelines lean, refreshed, real, and it ultimately helps performance because the rep's not juggling junk and not realizing what junk is, because you take a good majority of it out for them automatically.
Do you have a particular kept rate, like a demo kept rate that you've seen in the SaaS world? I work in the agency, digital marketing and agency, and SaaS can be a little bit different, a lot more enterprise. But let's talk in the SaaS world, the demo world. What's like a universal benchmark you've seen that things should be keeping as far as demo set, and then
hold rate?
What's that hold rate?
Again, one thing I always preach to everyone: one size does not fit all. And if anybody ever comes in going, this is best practice, this is industry standard, no, it's industry standard for whatever strategy they were using, their TAM, their pricing, their product. Those are all inputs that change that number. But I will say a hold rate range that I've seen over the years: average rep 45%, a good rep 85%. Never going to have it. Good rep that builds that value.
That's what I was going to ask.
We can jump into that one.
Sucky reps. If you know you suck, it's okay. We can all get better. Yeah. Chris just said 85%. Now I'm going to agree with you there. And I'm going to say universally, I know their inputs change things. But a hold rate, and I'm going to let you cook a little bit more on what you're about to say. A hold rate, to me, anecdotally speaking, but doing over 10,000 hours of pitching myself, I feel is contingent on how well you set, value, all of those good things. And we should be seeing those 75, 80%, no matter what, because we're dealing with a human on the, so what are 85? You said I've seen good. What are some of the things you think make an 85%er?
You kind of spoke to it, and it's actually one of my levers in the book that bring up later. But one of the hidden levers is nobody coaches what to do after the demo set. Very rarely do they have a playbook for that. You know, did you reiterate the pains that you brought up, that you discovered from that? You know, they bring that up during the discovery, and then you have a lot of product pitch. That stuff gets forgotten. That pain gets forgotten. And you use it with your pitch, and you touch on it, but that normally that pain that the customer complains about, that problem you need to solve, comes pretty early in the call. So once you get that demo set, reiterate that pain. Hey, I understand where you come from. You said XYZ was a major problem for you. We got that demo scheduled for Thursday. I really look forward to solving that for you with XYZ part of our product. I'm also going to see if I can actually see what other great ideas I can come up with, helping you save even more time, money, issues right here. And I'll bring that on Thursday. Does that sound good? Yes, it does. Awesome. Reiterating that little, the emotional part. Everyone's an emotional buyer. We buy on emotion. We see something cool, shiny, new. I got to have it. 9 times out of 10, if you wait 3 days, you don't even care about it anymore. You won't buy it. Just one of those things. So keeping that pain and that emotion top of mind right after you schedule that demo is important. Reiterate that in a text message. Reiterate that in an email. Keep it top of mind. And keep it personal to them, because let's be real, they probably got 3 or 4 other marketing companies or what have you trying to sell them something. They might have 2 other demos that week. You guys are going to get mixed. You have to do everything you can to be the most emotional product they're buying right now.
That helps that data tell that data to tell a better story. Yeah. Okay.
And that's where the top reps are. They understand why the person is giving them the time in the first place, and they make sure to keep it top of mind.
Okay. That's good advice. We're talking about numbers. Numbers can get very boring, but that's all we've been living by. And I'm glad you brought that up about the emotion. And speaking of numbers, name one overhyped KPI you'd blow up tomorrow, and one unsexy metric every CRO should tattoo on their forearm. So one KPI that you'd blow up, get rid of it, and then one, it's not that sexy, but you got it. This sucker's got to be tattooed on you.
So stepping into more of a RevOps standpoint here, I've been trying to keep a little more sales-minded, but more RevOps that I hear all the time is I go into so many orgs, and it's, we have a big inbound team. Oh, cool. How many MQLs are, we drive this many MQLs each month. Cool. We're driving 2,000 MQLs. That's great. How many of them are actually qualified? Oh, well, I don't know, but we're doing 2,000. Yeah, but maybe only 5,500 are viable. What's your bad data rates? What's all that? So, I hate the inbound lead count number because it means nothing. If 50% of it's bad data, but I see it all the time in marketing reporting. They always push it. Look, our inbound leads are going up. And then they always love to go and blame, sales. Hey, but sales isn't converting them the same. Conversion's down. It's like when you really devil's in the details, you really dig into those 2,000 MQLs or 5,000 or 10,000. It's like, well, yeah, you had bad data rate went up. You're driving less ICP aligned customers. You're driving more people from, Facebook instead of Google search, which is lower intent. You know what I mean? So I just hate that number because it's useless. There's nothing to do with it until you break it down into what matters.
Yeah. You know what's funny? Before you answer the one that they should have tattoo, I've taken some inbound leads in my day, and some inbound leads that suck. Doesn't mean that marketing sucks. There's going to be a percentage, but if we're rah-rahing, oh, look at all these sales we drove in, and we don't look at quality, here's what can happen. So, not trying to brag, but I've been able to escalate and to be able to do and coach and train and everything and be number one. So a bad lead, I learned to what you talked about, the emotion, not manipulate, not play on emotion, but I have this heart for business owners, small, large, medium size, to win. You tell me a goal, I'm going to inspect a way to get it. So I'll go in there and pull out everything about the personal development side of a business owner that needs to change about them. Because a lot of them, how much does this cost? What is this going to cost? And you just want to smack somebody and saying, quit using that 4-letter word with me.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what you need to do to win, to change your situation, to start being different and toughen up. Put on your big boy, your big girl pants right now. Let's go. Let's grow. So I've had a knack for doing that. And then all of a sudden the deal sells, but it wasn't our ideal customer profile. Yep. And then my rah, and like, I think you can take on the world because I believe in legacy changing. Yep. That's what I did for myself. Then it ends up churning. So that I start getting yelled at. Why'd you sell it? And I'm like, so the seller's going to be like, if you're in me, well, you sent it to me.
Yeah.
And they said they had a problem. It was a problem that we could solve, but they still weren't the ICP. And that happens sometimes.
Yeah. And that brings me to another one of my my hidden levers that I always bring up that companies don't look at is, this is our top guy. He's crushing the number. He's, just number one all the time, always here. Like, let's take him and replicate. I wish we could take him and clone him and replicate him, right? You hear that all the time. But one of my things is, your top rep may be costing the company the most money because you don't know what the LTV on his customers are. How many complaints do you have when you sell that non-ICP aligned customer and throw them over the fence, right? And oftentimes, and I've seen it probably 70% of the time at companies I go to, is they're actually most revenue generating based on retention numbers, everything rep is more in like 70% rep, like number 7 play or top 6. He's like down there. The guy that doesn't get any credibility, he's not middle of the pack, he's above that, but he's not at the top 10 level. But he generates the company the most money, and you never replicate him. He's the guy that explains the product efficiently. He's the guy that, makes sure that the customer understands what they're buying. He makes sure those little bitty things that cause customers to churn because people don't like to mention it, he tells them ahead of time. All that stuff. And so his deals stick. They renew. They upsell. They grow. They don't create as many support tickets that take up support reps, bandwidth, all that stuff.
Would RevOps, with certain technologies, be able to figure out those trends and themes in that?
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the big things of, oftentimes RevOps gets, we focus on marketing, sales, customer service. I make it a point, we're already all the way through the whole customer life cycle for the most part. Why not step over into finance? So I go bring in finance. That's actually the 4 heads that I consider a RevOps person should be, working with and connecting together.
Okay.
And that's where, we go to, go break down the numbers. Hey, this is our top performing rep. Cool. Let's look at the book of business that he sold. What does the renewal rates look like? And of course, you pull in finance for that stuff. What does each rep's renewal rate look like on their book of accounts that they've sold? What's the upsell revenue generated? What's the customer service cases count by that book of business? Cool. You can equate that stuff out in the time because you see open case, assigned, speed to execution, how quickly was it closed. And so you can quantify, man, they sell a lot, but they equate 12% of customer service hours a month or just their deals, complaining that they weren't told about this, that this part doesn't work this way. They told them it would work for them, but it doesn't. And it's all those bad fits. And that's where I tell a lot of people, a lot of companies, stop trying to replicate your top rep until you investigate that, because all you're doing is replicating, bad practices and, impacting your long-term value, right? Because ultimately a company scales when retention scales.
I believe in systems, sales systems, obviously doing a lot of sales training, having Legacy Connect selling. So yeah, I'm gonna be biased, but I think things should be able to be replicated, duplicated, whatever, adjective you want to, that's akin to that. And because you need something to measure to. And so many companies will try this sales system, this sales system, this sales system. And much like data, the sales system won't stick. And I like, you and I have had conversations before. There's a way to make that data stick. There's a way to have the hype. I'm a data-driven company, but I'm successful and the data's resonating. Is there a particular sales system? I mean, you don't even know mine, but we just connected, but I'm saying just out there, I don't shy away from other people's sales system. Is there a sales system that you've walked into a company or counseled a company and they were using and you saw that it was generating any particular sales system come to mind, or no? Has that not happened in your
And when
case?
you say sales system, you mean strategy, not tech, right?
Strategy, not tech. And it could be, and I should say, is there, like, have you seen one, and have you seen one that really aligns, that RevOps aligns with? Because you got like Sandler and you got spin selling, you got all kinds. I was just curious, just asking about different sales systems.
Nothing so much, only because of my methodology. Like I said before, one size does not fit all. So I always try to keep an open mind on applications, strategies, things like that, until I get all the inputs and decide. I will say that the back in the day when I was at Profit Fuel, they, Butch Hodson, AJ Mayer, they actually do scripting for companies. They actually wrote the book that's behind me here, which is Sales Lab Scripting.
Yeah, pull that up.
So
is that one that you highly recommend?
Yes, they actually just released it this year. If you go through the book and everything, a lot of what it, the journey that they went through and what it talks about in some of it, I was there during that time. That's when I built my first sales operations department. So their whole sell-fire strategy is really great. But again, one size doesn't fit all. Listen like Zig Ziglar, like all the different strategies out there, like you said, spin selling. They're all applicable based on the inputs. So I don't really have a favorite. I just try to go through everything and understand, where can this be used later, right? It's a tool.
I was just curious. Yeah, because I'll read a lot. I don't hate on any particular sales system. There's some principles. I think there's ways to systematize things more and have those foundational things brought out, and finding those themes and have them clearly articulated and conveyed to where a human being can more easily follow it, and of course produce. Because you get too technical with even on the human side, the soft skill side, it just goes in one ear out the other. They don't adopt it. But I was just wondering. I'm gonna get back to one of my questions.
I do think I missed your previous question of what should a CRO get tattooed?
Yeah, let's get that on. What needs to be? What's that one?
Discount by rep. Discount rate by rep is like one of the craziest metrics that often CROs don't look at, and blows my mind.
So explain discount by rep. You're saying that this rep is going in every freaking sale. They're offering up the discount. Customer didn't even ask for it. They're just throwing it out there.
This is the easiest. Like most companies, a good majority, at least in the startup world, I will say more established companies, they tend to have like rules around discounting. But when you get into the SaaS startup world, it's kind of like the Wild West. Whatever gets the revenue in, whatever gets the deal. And oftentimes you'll see reps miss quota. And then when you dig into the numbers, you're like, you discounted 22% of your quota attainment away, right? Like if you just wouldn't have discounted, you would have hit goal. You would have actually overachieved your goal, but you discounted it away. Another crazy metric is on average between 7 to 12% of sales calls drop a discount in the first 5 minutes of the call.
That's an interesting data set.
I will drop that was learned actually from Gong due to their call analysis stuff, which is really cool. Okay. But like should you be dropping a discount in the first 5 minutes of a hour-long pitch? Probably not. Like you haven't, no pain, no value, no discovery, nothing's been done yet. But I've also seen a company going, we really want to move the needle. Do you guys realize you on average discount about $220,000 a month? No.
Yeah.
Cool. On average, get this, on average, all of the deals, once you bake everything out, an average of a 28% discount on every deal every month when you baked it out.
This was a
This is a
company
company,
where
yeah, fully embedded with, fully working for. Looked at it and go, you realize like you're discounting roughly 28% on average on every deal.
that's powerful, Chris. I'm
A lot of money.
I'm a double stamp that. I endorse this message. You know, so you CEOs, CROs, start measuring that discount rate, measure when it happens, and then to combat that, go back into the soft skill and teach these guys about connecting first so that they're trusted. And so when they're giving that value, the people believe the value.
Yep.
The people have to feel it, trust it. It goes back to that. I love that you brought that up, Chris.
Yeah.
If you had to build a 30-day boot camp, Chris, you built this 30-day boot camp to make a rep truly fluent. What 3 drills are non-negotiable? And we're talking about data fluency.
Yep. So coming from a data perspective, one is every KPI that they learn in training, what do they control? What do they not control? That goes into that number changing.
Okay.
That's
fair.
step one. Because nothing's more annoying than somebody telling you this is off, and you don't even know you don't even know what it means, what it is, or what you're doing to make it wrong, right? You don't know what you did wrong.
Yeah.
That's not a fun feeling.
Yep.
Number 2 is ultimately how to prioritize their leads. Here's your you have a pipeline. Here's, not to say perfect, but here's the main quick ways you can decide where to start for the day. Because that's the hardest part, getting started. So either that's a special lead view, maybe there's a lead scoring system, something like that. Training them how to use that so they effectively attack their day correctly every day.
Okay.
Teaching them about, hey, we have time zone filters. Prioritize by that. Prioritize by last activity date. Maybe last web activity on the lead. Lead source, like all those different things, teaching them that from the start. Because it's not a fun feeling knowing you have a big quota number and you don't know how to start your day. Or you start off wrong, right? You got to start off on the right foot, get a win. That propels you further throughout the day. And then the third one is really how to reverse engineer their quota. That's the big thing. This is my number at the start of the month. Cool. Where, based on your performance, because we always say you got to hit this KPI number, this number of dials, this number of talk times, this number of demos. What if those numbers don't add up to them hitting their quota based on their performance? So showing them where they need to raise the bar to actually hit quota based on their performance is important. So how to reverse engineer that quota all the way back down to understand what their KPIs are, their KPI goals to win, not what their manager's telling them, what the company guidelines are for performance, all that. What do they need to do? Because oftentimes they're like, I hit all my KPIs and I didn't hit goal. I don't know, it's like, well, my manager told me to, I did it every day and it's not working. No kidding.
There's nothing worse when that happens. They're like, Mom, Dad, you told me that if I did this, if I got good grades, I'd get out and get a job. It didn't work.
And the biggest thing is having the talk with them. They're like, look, if these are what you need to hit to win, be real with yourself. Don't set a soft demo and be like, don't look at it as I need 10 demos a week. I'm short 2. I'm gonna set these weak demos so that I know I hit that number. That's not real. Don't lie to yourself. If you're
preaching loud enough, my amen. And
if you're short,
go with it.
You're short. Just be honest with yourself and pick it up next week. Those numbers only impact you. It doesn't matter if you miss by 2. The manager's probably not going to notice most of the time. It's all about you at that point. Own your numbers, understand your numbers, and just realize that it's tailored to you, and you need, you got to do it. You got to own it. So
nothing worse than weak appointments set and then weak demos set. Like an SDR can set a weak appointment, or they can make a strong
SDRs
one.
Yeah.
And then that AE can go in and set like, okay, they agreed to go reschedule here, or they agreed to meet here, and you're just throwing it up there to have a number. And that's where I'm like super data driven actually, but then I'll also get mad at the data driven world about not broaching the subject of the mentality, the mindset. Why is the data driving them to set a weak demo? What are they afraid of? What's the mindset? Are they're activity minded instead of production minded? What caused that?
I think a lot of it honestly goes into you set quantity over quality goals, and that's probably one of the biggest things. We tell most like SDRs, you monitor hold rate. I don't care how many you set. That's you should be, yes, you're held to a number. There's expectations, but the ultimate goal is quality, right? If you're setting if you have an SDR that's their hold rate on their demos is 70%, I don't need you to set 15 like the other guy. The other guy's hold rate's 40%. So ultimately, setting that lever,
No, you're
setting
right.
that lever of hold rate needs to, and again, that gets back to the baselines. What does good look like? So that you can coach towards it and go, look, most of the SDRs are setting this many demos, but you're above average on your hold rate. We're going to give, they'll get some leeway, right? There's probably spending more time building value and making sure that that person shows up. So of course they're going to set less demos, but you know what? They show up. And that's where, baseline, everything changes. One size does not fit all.
And real quickly, before we kind of go into our speed round, I did want to ask you, developing and starting companies and RevOps and the technical side, sometimes if you mention if your data is coming from too many different tools or products, it can become so ambiguous and overwhelming for a sales rep who's typically working on their art and their skill. Even sellers who go into sales manager, who go into CRO, sometimes up to CRO, CEO, SVP, all that good stuff, they're not as techie, if you will. And I say all that to say, is there a certain tool stack or an AI tool stack, or is there one RevOps platform that does it all? What are you suggesting out there, or how many tools are you saying to grab your data from so it can be simplified to act on it?
A lot of times, the biggest thing from a sales rep perspective is I try to keep them in the CRM in the system. Like, I don't need them jumping into a Mode dashboard or a Google Sheet, which we all love, all that stuff. So, and again, I try to keep, and most of the time you can keep the KPIs that matter to a sales rep in the CRM most of the time. They don't need to see the long, year over year comparisons. They don't need to see, last quarter versus this quarter. They need to see right now. The most a rep should be looking at is probably, again, depends on sales cycle, but maybe the month that they're in, and maybe a little bit into the previous month, because seeing how they did last quarter, last year, the same time frame, doesn't matter. They're not going to remember what they were doing at that time, what they changed, what script they were using, all the different coaching things that have gone into them over the last year. Keep it simple. Sales reps don't need a lot of data, honestly. It's more about identifying where they should be focused in their pipeline and what they need to do right now to hit the number.
I'm with you. I like that. I like that answer. Going into playing both roles of seller, of leader, like I told you when we were just shooting the breeze. I'm an artist at heart, so I like a good tool stack, but I want that tool stack. Hey, make it simple for me so I can go and do my artistry in communicating.
Execute quickly. Yeah. That's the biggest thing. Keep it simple.
Some leaders, they claim too much data kills instinct. We're talking about that. Too much data kills instinct. So there's the feel for the deal that every top closer has. We're kind of on that subject. That intuition. Where's the line between intuition and analysis paralysis? Intuition meets data. Is there
I would say with top reps in general, I'd say it turns into ego if they're at least not taking the data into account. I think it's important for who to call, when to call, all those kind of inputs, pricing to start with. package that they're praying, most likely a fit for. But after that, when it comes to, product fit, the final price, do you hard close? Do you not, soft close? Do you try to do a demo on the fly? I think all of that is where it kind of, there's no analysis for that. It's all gut. Got to go off intuition at that point.
Fair
That's
enough.
not something like, could you pull the data? Yeah, I'm sure you could. There's data points on when, how many people go on the fly with the demo, how many people book a demo instead. You could look at it by call length. But really, none of that matters. It's all about gut. Where's the customer at that point in time? How's the emotional buy-in? Are they vibing with you? So, but you got to blend it, right? Like, if you're calling the wrong leads and you're not prioritizing correctly, having that gut intuition doesn't help you. You're going to talk to less people.
I'm glad you said that, because I asked that question purposely, because when at the very top, I said I almost got beat up, got a right hook from a CFO and about saying your data-driven company sucks. But really, I live off of the data.
Yeah.
But what I was trying to get across is that we can lay out all of this data and it can tell a beautiful story for that person, for that sales leader or whomever's delivering it. But if you can't articulate it to the seller in such a way that inspires and motivates and coaches them, gives them that feedback that it should everyone should be getting punched in the gut a little bit, lifting heavier weight than they can lift from the data and say, oh, if I did this here, this would make me better. I'd increase this. Now here's the soft skill that attributes to that. And that coach, that person delivering that in a way that the seller really adopts it and appreciates and trusts. That's why I say everything is connection first. Connect with your people. If you connect, they'll take your critique better. They'll take even the data better. And then on the seller side, quit being don't be the old dog who can't learn new tricks and think that you're so much of a Michael Jordan that you can't operate in the system of the data to get better. Because one time Phil Jackson, the coach of the Chicago Bulls, if you're a basketball fan, was telling Michael Jordan, quit. You're Michael Jordan. You're the best. Quit taking all the shots. You have a player who's open, who has such a high percentage of three-pointers, jumpers in Steve Kerr, and give him the ball. Do you believe in him? Yeah. Do you think he can shoot? Yeah. Pass the ball and Steve Kerr makes this winning shot to win a playoff game. That's where sellers need to chill out.
Yep.
But anyway,
agreed. Yeah, you get that. You definitely get that top closer mentality. Sometimes the data is used to curb. Honestly, I'm the best. Are you though? Look at so and so's hold rate over yours. Just because you.
Are you though?
Yeah. I love showing the numbers and go, well, you're the best at closing. They're better than you at setting. And their hold rate, their demos show up. You have a pretty bad show rate, but you do close what shows up. So I'll give you that. You know what I mean? Like there's wins and losses, and the data definitely helps humble them sometimes, because top sales reps love stack ranks, and when they don't see themselves at the top, that's one of the things we stack rank. Normally stack rank like hold rates, close rates, set rates. I've done all that in the past. All the KPIs, and that's where it's funny. Like they'll see themselves on the leaderboard for revenue. But once they see themselves like number 9 for set rate or something, they're like, wait, hold up.
Remove that report, guys. You're doing that to embarrass me. No,
oh, yeah.
I get it. I do like the stack ranks. Are there, you mentioned a book that your friends wrote, or is there anything that you wrote or anything that you are doing right now that you want to bring light to? I want to make sure that people can leverage you, your time, your energy, your mind, your wisdom.
I'm currently working on my own book. It's just kind of the hidden levers that most companies don't think about. It's levers over luck. Nice and simple. Nice and simple. It's just those things that aren't RevOps 101. It's those metrics that you don't think of, that you don't look for, that most companies miss. And when you add them all up, it makes major percentage impacts, man. From optimizing meeting schedules to non-peak revenue times. The discounting rate stuff is in there as well. How to identify that. Understanding which reps you should be learning from and which ones you should not be learning from. What to look at to identify that. So just 100 of my top tips, really.
Okay. I'll get all your handles
Yep.
so people can like follow you when that comes about. So that's good stuff. All right, Chris, let's go into the lightning round. All right. These are quick spitfire answers that I'd love to, where your brain goes. All right. Legacy Connect lightning round. Let's go with Chris. Worst dashboard crime you've ever seen?
Not putting in labels on the date range filters. So on dashboards, a lot of times they may say, dials this last week, whatever. Putting a label so that you know what all the little date range filters are, things like that. I've seen ones where, hey, connect rate's down. Like it's horrible for the, what's going on. And go to look and it's set for like a Saturday. Just double checking the data in the dashboard and making sure what it says is actually what it's filtered to. Be amazed at how many people break reports, and save filters and all that, and then you're driving your ship with the wrong map.
Discipline, attention to detail.
Yep.
Okay. One book every RevOps leader, entrepreneur, or seller must read. Either one of those three?
Honestly, Sales Lab Scripting. Pick it up on Amazon.
Okay, Sales Lab Scripting. Okay,
on Amazon. Great book.
All right. One piece of sales advice you secretly think is overrated.
Always be closing. Always be building value.
All right.
You can't hard close if you build no value.
That's what okay. Fair. I like that. KPI you'd use to measure a friendship.
Meme response time.
Meme response. Yes.
It's not that hard to look at a meme and laugh and give me an emoji back. You know what I mean? Like, are you? And then do you share? Do you send another one? You know what I mean? Like we gotta go back and forth.
I have a lot of friends who see my post and they'll talk to me about it and laugh with me about it. But no, I said, hey, I love that you called me up behind closed doors, but I don't want to be secret lovers. I need you to
repost and share,
present me to the public. Yes, I my self-esteem. I got those social anxieties too. All right, biggest myth about RevOps you wish would die.
Like RevOps, honestly, a lot like it's a huge problem with RevOps is people misunderstand their function, and we get stuck in I need this report. Can I see this data? When in reality, RevOps is supposed to be reviewing it themselves proactively without being asked and changing processes, improving things. So RevOps should be a completely proactive department, not reactive. If your whole RevOps department is taking orders, you're losing value from the RevOps team, right?
Last one, it's not on here, Chris. I'm going to throw you for a curveball. RevOps, it's been all the rage. That's all we hear. I've said on webinars, RevOps. Love you, RevOps people. Say my daughter wants to go into RevOps. Can she become rich?
Yeah, I mean, we do pretty well. I will say that. We do pretty well. And it is it's an easy, I'd say it's an easy journey, but most RevOps people I know, they start out as an AE sales rep. Most of the ones I've trained, I've plucked directly off the sales floor. They understand the metrics enough. They understand the strategy of the sell. They understand the data. So really, you're just taking them up a little bit higher and teaching them all the nuances that they didn't get exposed to. But honestly, they make the best RevOps people. They've used the tools. They've used them in the sales ecosystem. They get their data from marketing. They've complained about the data from marketing. You know what I mean? They complain about CS. So they interact with all the same departments at a much smaller level in the weeds.
Yep.
So stepping into a RevOps role and really starting to learn and understand, they have a good baseline. So it's actually a interesting career journey. Almost every RevOps person I know used to sell. So,
all right. Well, you heard it from Chris. Hey, Chris, it was good having you on. And I hope you guys and gals got something out of that. Some new disciplines, some new things to look at. There were some nuggets in there that just are meant to make you better, different. Let's go to that next level in life, in our wealth, the way we think about things. So love you being on here. I'll definitely have you on again. I'm going to check out the book.
Appreciate it.
And have a good one. Everybody out there, you know what I say. Let's go, let's grow, let's connect good so we can collect good.
Love it.
Changer. I want to be what you meant to be. It's never too late. That timely quote challenged me when I couldn't take. Deferred hopes and dreams in my head turning gray. And God told me tell him about the first 48.